yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. So today's theme is nutritional balance on a plant-based diet. And I've tried to include as many what ifs as I possibly could in order to make it extra interesting. And one of the things that I want to emphasize right away is that the big picture, which will be toward the end, is that a plant-based or plant-centered diet is a good idea for everybody, unless you have an unusual concern. I'm looking to make sure, okay. For a moment, I lost my thumbnails of the other people watching, and I worried that I had somehow cut myself out. So here's the next slide. This is the way it appeared on our on the announcement that came in on the email. So I want to make sure everyone knows getting proper nutrients with a plant-based diet with Maudene. I think I might have used this one at an earlier talk, but I love the fact that plants really have dominated our conversations about food forever. We can see it in language, and the language use goes beyond just English. But here are some of our favorites, where the ones in green represent references to plant-based things, whereas the ones in red represent animal. And for sure, we do more comparisons and little teasing with plant foods than we do with animal foods. There's one that is also said in Chinese, where the informal greeting is freely translated as, "Have you had rice yet?" Other things about foods and plant-based diet is, yay, it is now May, and we know that the farmers markets are back. That's just a little yay on my side. So make sure that we start with what is the criteria for a balanced diet. By the way, you guys know I'm always sipping water and eating a cough drop. So if I'm not sipping water and eating a cough drop, you should wonder if the body snatchers came and took me. So here I am, cough drops and water. Throughout life, we all need what we call macronutrients: proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. And macro is defined as something that we eat in grams. Now, you might not need to know that level of specificity, but we talk about eating grams of protein and grams of carbohydrate and grams of fat. Whereas the micronutrients are defined in milligrams and sometimes micrograms. So we need far smaller quantities, and they are distributed throughout practically everything that we enjoy eating. And of course, an important big nutrient, although not a micro, is water, or in this case, total fluid. And we need lots of other protective substances that are in plants and animals that aren't specifically vitamins or specifically minerals or specifically fluid. So let's start with our big questions. Are there any nutritional concerns associated with a plant-based or plant-centered eating style? And another is, are there any nutritional benefits that are associated with a plant-centered eating style? So my first slide is, let's talk about vitamins. 13 in all. When I was training back in the dark ages, we used the numbers for the vitamins. We hardly ever used the words. So ascorbic acid or phyloquinone were not words we threw around. We always used the words, the letters. And as far as I can recall, the last official vitamin was discovered in 1949, which I think was a red letter year for the Nelsons. Okay. So in terms of a plant-centered diet, probably vitamin B12 is the one that gets the most attention of all the vitamins. And that's because vitamin B12 is only found in foods that come from plants. I'm so sorry, foods that come from animals. So anything that's an egg or cheese or the flesh, chicken, beef, lamb, pork, milk, yogurt, all contains vitamin B12. So the question is, if a person is limiting their animal products, will they be low in vitamin B12? And the answer is probably not. The question would then be, if you completely omit animal products because you are vegan in this case, then it's very important that you consume a vitamin B12 fortified food or vitamin B12 supplement. Now, it may take a while before vitamin B12 deficiency is observed, And it might occur even in people who are eating animal foods, but just not eating a lot. So because vitamin B12 requires this substance called intrinsic factor, and it also requires a relatively acidic stomach, it's possible that you could have a condition in which you're not using or making enough intrinsic factor and your B12 is low. Easy enough to get a medical a lab test, and that can be determined. Excuse me. Now, if you are thinking, well, I eat some animal products, but not a lot. The acidity level of my stomach is probably fine. And by the way, let's ask ourselves who might have a reduced level of acidity, and that most of the time are people well over 65. So that includes me, and I'm gathering one or two more people on this meeting today. But again, if we're eating animal-based foods such as yogurt and cheese, it's fine. So the next question becomes, if someone doesn't want to take a supplement and someone is fairly, committed to not having animal-based foods, the question comes up, can vitamin B12 be made by bacteria, and that the bacteria that is used to ferment foods? So there are some studies that are promising. They vary, it seems, with the outcome, that something like fermented rice or fermented lentils, such as are eaten in India as dosa or idli, also kimchi, seem to contribute some vitamin B12. But I've quoted an author who is in this particular link that I put in there, Eating Healthy at sanfranciscogate.com. Not all foods that have traditionally been made through fermentation, because it uses a bacterial colony, that's one of the lactobacillus colony. Not all those foods will contain the beneficial bacteria that produce the B12 if you get them in a supermarket, because they've usually been treated with a very high temperature, which has destroyed the bacteria prior to it being packaged, so that might not have the B12 you're hoping for. And the idea here, as the end of the quote, may have been heated to high temperatures, which kills the bacteria. So on the right-hand side are some other examples of sources of vitamin B12, including fortified cereals. And I don't mind eating, a fortified cornflake or fortified orange juice. Tofu will generally also have vitamin B12 added. There are some vitamin waters. And of course, if it's an animal food like cheese or eggs or whey powder, which is derived from milk, the vitamin B12 will be there. So that's really the only vitamin that seems to be one that one would be cautious about on a plant-centered diet, because you can get the B1, B2, B3, B5, B7 from the other lots of plant and animal foods. So, I wanted to note folic acid. While it's not a nutrient that is at risk for people who are eating plant-centered diets, I just like the fact that it gets its name from the word foliage. So if you're wondering, where can I get folic acid? Just think dark leafy vegetables, and there you are. But in addition, it's also found in beans and peanuts, sunflower seeds, fresh fruits, fruit juices, whole grains, seafood, and others. Folic acid probably is most famous for being, if in inadequate amounts, can cause a birth defect called spina bifida. And that's an unfortunate thing. I mean, any birth defect is unfortunate, but if it's when the embryo is developing, it has kind of a condition where it turns inside out and it forms the tube that becomes the spinal column. And if folic acid is deficient in the diet of the mom, then that tube is not going to close properly. And what's remarkable is that process of that tube forming occurs almost before anyone even knows she's pregnant. So that's important for having folic acid in the diet all the time, not just once you're pregnant. So we have had folic acid enriched into our flour, and so it's in our bread, our rice, our pasta, and so on for about 20 years. Next one.
We have a question here from Nancy Stern. Can one simply take a B12 vitamin or a multi that contains it?
Absolutely. So the most important thing is that you're getting a good product that has a good quality of manufacturing. So you'd ask yourself, well, how do I know? And I don't mind taking a second to go into a website. Here we go. Let's do this one. It's called LabDoor. Is this okay with everybody if I kind of wander over to Chrome? LabDoor sure. Is a private lab that, and you can see it's a very easy URL to remember, labdoor.com, that evaluates supplements for their quality, and they use very specific criteria. You should say to me, well, Maudene, what makes you think LabDoor is telling the truth? Well, because what the fact is that our supplement industry is not regulated, meaning that there's no obligation of a supplement company to prove that there is efficacy in the product they put out. And there's a lot of ethics that are present in the supplement industry, but as well a lot of unethical ones. So let's look here for rankings, and I'll go to vitamin B12 right away, and then be my guest to check things out as you go later. Here's B12, and they have the highest ranking, an A, Nature Made B12 time released. Now you have to know I'm not getting a coupon or a discount or an honorarium or anything from either Nature Made or LabDoor, but I guess this is a good time that everyone can see it really can matter how the quality of the product. I'm going to scroll down and see, let's look at some ones that really don't do well. Okay, this is not a happy day. Garden of Life, My Kind Organics Spray, and it gets a fairly low score because they say that they found 868 micrograms of B12, but they claimed 500. So that's the concern, because it's, in other words, it's over the claim. Doesn't mean that you're consuming something dangerous. They found something well under the lead limit, as well as well under the arsenic limit. But either way, the company wasn't keen on it and gave it a fairly low score. And I would invite you all to just go to LabDoor if you're going to buy a dietary supplement and see what they give as the best, highest ranking. Is that good?
For me, I appreciate this so much. I feel like it's an answer to prayer because I've been wanting a B12 supplement and wanting to know exactly which one to get. But for me, I might actually be inclined to get the one that you just talked about because it's giving me more than it says it is. It's organic and it doesn't have any of the bad stuff in it.
This one doesn't have any of the bad stuff either down here. I mean, the limits are well under detectable. Yeah. And so the other thing is that makes me question the manufacturing process if the claim on the label is significantly under what is actually in the package. So yeah, but I hear myself thinking too, well, I'm getting more for the money. And that's not a bad thing, but I just don't know that the product should be recommended if it doesn't, it's not consistent with what their content is as to what is on the label. And this one, I think Nature Maids are pretty affordable, and they always, it sounds like I've been stalking CVS, right? But I often see the buy one, get one half price or that kind of an offer. Now there's another lab called Consumer Lab, and Consumer Lab also ranks not only dietary supplements, but lots of other products. So as you can see here, not just vitamins, minerals, but they've done olive oil, they've done quite a few things. Excuse me, the hitch is that Consumer Lab wants you to create an account, and the account has a very modest fee. I think it's very low. It might be $20 a year. So it's not like you're gonna, miss a payment on rent or, a nice pair of winter gloves. It's good, and I think they probably do far more information, so you're getting more again for your effort. There's another lab, USP, and I think on the Nature Made product, they had USP on the side. So I would say if you wanted to go online, this is worth an investment. I had it and I just let it expire and I forgot to renew it. Or Consumer Lab or Lab Door.
So Roberta had a question, who funds them? Are you talking about Consumer Lab, Roberta, or Labdoor?
I'd be curious as to all of these that are putting
Well,
their information out. They have to have funds from someplace.
So
And
Lab Door sells some of their products. They do rather, let me take that back, not some. There is an offer to purchase with, it's opening. I have the slowest laptop on this side of the Hudson River. So let's imagine we went to a multivitamin, and I'm just picking one out of the thing, women's, and now we're going to look for GNC Women's Ultra Mega, which gets a C+. Now, if you want to purchase this product, you have that option here. So that's probably how they make some of their operating fees. I don't know beyond that, but I think it's an excellent question because we really should be scrutinizing. Because you know how the phrase "follow the money" is always true. But I feel that it's sort of intellectually and professionally, I'm trusting. I've seen other rankings about the Lab Door as a website, and they were very positive. Any other questions on looking at a supplement? Okay. So if you are thinking of a B12 supplement, then I would just have you look for some of the ones that are referenced. Now, the bigger companies don't want their corporate image kind of messed up with someone testing them and finding them to be in a poor state. So probably Kirkland, you know, from Costco, or CBS brand. I suspect, I don't have any evidence, but I suspect they're going to have quality products. And there aren't very many supplement manufacturers in the country. I think there's 4 or fewer. So most places are buying their product from a mass producer and then packaging it under their own brand name or their house name. Barbara, you'll let me know if there's more questions, right? Okay, so went through folic acid, which I said is not necessarily a nutrient that is in question in a plant-centered diet, but in fact, it's probably generously consumed for someone who's having lots of plants. Okay. Vitamin D is another nutrient that is not necessarily limited on a plant-centered diet, but most people are not getting enough vitamin D, although we can manufacture it ourselves by exposure of ultraviolet light that converts a substance under the surface of our skin into vitamin D. We can also get it from lots of foods. But I think what is phenomenal is that the only food in the produce aisle that's rich in vitamin D are mushrooms. I love them. I'm not a raw mushroom girl, so when you invite me to dinner, I want you to please saute them, but they're a good source of vitamin D. Now, minerals. At least 16 minerals are established as necessary for human health for a variety of functions in the body. Calcium is an easy one. It's the thing that bones are made of. Curiously, vitamin D, the first role that was identified was that it facilitates the absorption of calcium, so that if you had too much vitamin D in your diet, you actually might have too much calcium absorbed and end up with a different medical concern. But currently, most people are not getting enough vitamin D. While it isn't affecting their calcium absorption, it affects many other functions in the body, including the immune system and other things. So calcium, iron, zinc, and iodine might be of concern on a plant-centered diet, but potassium and magnesium and chloride, chromium rather, are available in both plants and animals, and it just means you're not making you're not eating the same food every day. The more variety, the better, to get the variety of these different nutrients. And regarding iron, calcium, and zinc, often a diet which is very high in fiber can affect how much of these minerals are absorbed. So the fiber can interfere with the absorption. That would be not like anybody that I know. Most of us don't eat, the recommended amount of fiber is 30 grams a day. Most of us don't get close to that. And so unlikely. Now, if you relocate to a part of the world where people are basically eating starchy tubers and nothing but beans and some grains that are not refined, I'm not making that sound like a desirable diet. I'm saying it's almost a diet of exclusion because of extreme circumstances. Then you might have an interference with how effectively your body is absorbing those minerals.
Are
But-
you saying if we have too much fiber, it could negatively in fact impact our iron, calcium, and zinc if we have too much fiber?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, but my caution is that the amount of fiber that would need to be would be well in excess of 30 grams a day. And most of us barely flirt with 25 grams. It's used, most Americans, I'm not sure, this is really a very classy and conscientious group, but most people are eating well less than 30. And the kinds of research that have looked at iron deficiency anemia in different parts of the world are seeing where there's either pockets where there's unusually high fiber intake because, like people that are gatherers who are sort of nomadic, or where the diet is very limited by political situation or extreme poverty, extreme food insecurity. And then it's a very high fiber intake. So people eating a lot of yams and a lot of, let's say, beans that are, we all love beans. I will never encourage anyone to limit their beans. But if there's a disproportionate amount of those, and it affects the availability of iron. Now for iron, and I'm not going to talk past if you have a continuation on that question. Let me just run a few more things in about iron.
We have a couple questions when you get a chance.
Okay, good, yay. So heme iron is the kind of iron that's found in animal foods, because when we eat an animal, we're eating a muscle. And then there's something called non-heme iron, which is the iron mainly found in plants. There's a little bit of non-heme iron in animals, but in plants, it's all non-heme. And non-heme is not as efficiently absorbed. And there's a remarkable thing that if you have a small amount of heme iron in a meal, that it improves the absorption of iron from everything else on the plate. So this is not me insisting that someone who is committed to not eating the flesh of an animal for ethical reasons, that I totally respect. But if you thought, well, beef is bad for my cholesterol, but you know what? A piece of beef the size of your index finger, like just this much, could probably improve the iron absorption of everything else on the plate. And then there's this product called Lucky Iron Fish. It's not a fish. It's a little ingot of iron that is sold around the world. It's encouraged to be put in your family pot. So you see on the right, I'm not sure if that's a fish stew or something, but then atoms of iron come out of this little ingot into the food, and that improves the iron availability to families without giving an iron supplement, which a lot of people say makes them get constipated, or without having to have an infrastructure where you need to package iron and distribute iron pills to people. If you ever went on the even Amazon or anywhere and just Googled Lucky Iron Fish, you'll see that there's a cost that if you buy a set of Lucky Iron Fish, you will probably spend, let's say, $40. The cost of those iron fish might be $4, but the rest of it is going to provide the Lucky Iron Fish free to other parts of the world. So it's an interesting way to make sure that iron is not in limited supply, and that it is also in a form, because everyone will eat from the family fish stew or rice and beans, because that's what the family is eating, as opposed to a jar of pills. I had a friend who's passed away many years ago, who was a hematologist, and he used to say, if we could get everyone to use an iron teaspoon for everything. So you stir your tea, your coffee, you eat your soup, you eat your pudding, whatever, your oatmeal, with an iron teaspoon. Every time you lick it, you're going to get a few atoms of iron. He says we could eliminate iron deficiency anemia all over the world. I'm not sure why that never caught on, but it looks like Lucky Iron Fish is kind of the next best thing. So are there questions about iron, Barbara, or should I
We have
go
a
on?
whole bunch of just different questions.
Oh,
If
Maybe
you
I'll,
want,
can I wait till later?
yeah, absolutely. We can do it
Okay.
at the end.
I
Sure.
promise we'll save.
Okay.
Okay. Then iodine may, and I have that in italics, be limited in a vegan diet, mainly because the best sources of iodine are animal foods, not exclusively, but some of the best. So fish, shellfish, cod, table salt, which is iodized, dairy foods, milk, cheese, yogurt, eggs, beef liver, chicken. Because the plant foods that might contain iodine may depend a lot on the soils in which they're grown. So some of the other iodine sources that are plant foods are the sea greens that are, well, very familiar in Japanese cuisine, nori, kelp, kombu, wakame. And there again, because of their proximity to the ocean and the availability of that mineral. It doesn't mean that a person who is a vegan will have an iodine deficiency. It is not a suggestion that you go for an iodine supplement. And if the person's not a problem with using a salt shaker, then you can get the little bits of iodine in your salt that might also just support your iodine requirements. For the next one, we talked about vitamins, we talked about minerals, we talked about, now we're going to say there's lots of protective substances in plants. So plant-centered diet has lots of pigments. So one of the pigments, I'm sorry, let me stop clicking on things. Like the deep purple pigment of foods that are like eggplant or plum is a pigment called zeaxanthin, which, as a friend told me, it's like sunglasses for your retina. It deposits on the retina in the eye and protects the eye from ultraviolet light. That's kind of cool. But also the pigment beta carotene, which is the orange pigment of carrots and other orange plants, similarly has been associated with protecting membranes from cancer. So there's lots of things. Fiber. Okay, so I mentioned fiber as though it were something to be worried about, but really the more fiber, the better. The best reason to eat fiber has to do with evacuation. But more and more research comes out as how different kinds of fiber can actually support microorganisms in your intestines, which then have significant impact on your natural immune system production of cells, improves the blood pressure, and improves mood. I mean, the list is long. So fiber, plants, anything that you got to chew on, that's good stuff. Okay. Now, also plants have estrogen-like compounds, not to the point of where I'm saying if you eat soy or if you eat clover, you are going to interfere with how your body normally uses estrogen. The compounds are in very low concentration compared to, let's say, a prescription. Excuse me, but there is an association with those estrogen-like compounds, including a word called genestin, which shows a change in rates of breast cancer and uterine cancer reduction associated with lower occurrence. Also related to lower cholesterol and lower heart disease. So these are things which are part of plants that when we consume them and from day to day seem to be protecting us as well. They're indoles. This is something that sounds like it should itch, right? So these would be in the like the cabbage family plants, mustard greens, collard greens, cabbage, broccoli, Brussels sprouts. And they seem to also be able to protect, like when a cell is dividing, and the DNA strand separates, there could be some random substance that binds to the DNA so that when the new cell is forming, the new DNA is mutated. And the indoles seem to protect against that. This is very, very basic research on the level of the cell. Nothing that I have ever done myself, but I know from various symposia how it works. Flavonols. Okay, so these are the things that are in green tea. To stop here, it would be only fair because we could be here until 10 p.m. talking about the wonderful protective substances in plants. So enjoy. I probably could have gone into honey, but that's even more fascinating. What is in honey that is protective other beyond just the sweetener. Okay, so a quickie. I said earlier, we need the macronutrients, protein, carbohydrates, and fats. So what's the deal with a plant-centered diet in terms of protein? I actually used this slide before a couple of months ago, so if anyone recognizes it, that's the deal. We use protein to do all kinds of, I call the protein the bricks that make up the building. We are the building, the bricks are the pieces that are composed of us, and then the mortar that holds the bricks together is another thing. That's the connective tissue. But we also use proteins to make hormones and make enzymes. So it's all about everything that goes on in the body. And proteins come to these are some of the functions of proteins in the body. I'm going to slide on, but you can see there are proteins that are part of muscle. There's structural proteins. That would be like the keratin of our hair and nails. The protein that is the stuff that enzymes and hormones are made of, and things that are signal the body, do this and stop doing that. Those are all protein type things. And when we talk about proteins, we're talking about combinations of amino acids. And may I just go again, give this one a light once over. We have in the food supply what are called essential amino acids, meaning that your body has to have these on the plate in your mouth. You're not going to manufacture them. Conditionally non-essential means that during certain phases of growth and infancy, these might be needed, but not as adults. And then these are considered not essential because if your body gets the hydrogen and the oxygen and the carbon and the nitrogen, it can make these. Okay. And it turns out that animal foods will have all of these in one. So every bite of chicken or egg or every bite of yogurt will have all of those amino acids. But in plants, you might find that some foods will be high in methionine, which is essential, but low in lysine, which is essential. But a complementary food will be high in lysine and low in methionine. So those are put together, they're called complemented. And that's the example here of beans and grains. So rice and beans, peanut butter and bread. If you have the smallest amount of animal products on your plate, you're getting all of your essential amino acids. Yay. Okay, I'm going to move on. And then
we have a couple questions. I don't know if protein absorption decreases with age. How do we increase protein intake on a vegetarian diet?
Well, first I would kid around with how much protein do you think your body needs, and you're probably getting it. I'll give you I'll make a little fun live moment here. And let's say what we know the body needs is the recommended amount is 0.8, don't panic, I'm going to keep it simple, grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Now, I don't work in kilograms, I definitely work in pounds, okay? But like a 70 kilogram person is probably about 150 pounds. Is that close enough? So anybody here 150 pounds? All right, now, so if we said therefore 70 kilos, and remember, I'm just winging it, times 0.8 is what? Somebody do the math. I can't do that, I'm too old. Okay.
I'm getting out my calculator.
Uh-huh. Everyone's frowning. Oh no, she's making us work.
56.
Okay, so that's 56 grams of protein a day. And now let's see, I'm sure everyone is getting their 56. By the way, I think these automatic bullets are a pain in the neck. I'm gonna take them out. If I want bullets, I'll ask for bullets. There we go. Okay. So let's say we're not necessarily vegetarian, but we're gonna talk an egg has 7 to 8, depending on the size of the egg. An ounce of meat, and this time we're talking chicken, fish, turkey, veal, has about 7 grams of protein. 8 ounces of milk, and that has about 7 grams. I'm trying to get an O, and I'm hitting everything except the O. Has about 8 grams. So, and then if we had something like Greek yogurt, I'm hoping everyone is in tune to some of these foods. Greek yogurt, 1 cup, has maybe about 15 grams. I'm winging it. So I think most of us are getting about our 56 grams a day with modest amounts of protein. It's approximate. Now let's talk plants. If I then added to that a half of a cup of beans, and I will eat more than a half a cup. That's considered, don't tease me with a half a cup. I want real food. Okay. Then I would say that's going to be 7 grams. And if I was eating 2 slices of bread, and we said before that the amino acids in beans and bread and rice are not all of the essentials, but by the end of the day, they've all come to the party. So a slice of bread, 2 slices of bread. Who eats 1 slice, right? Well, sometimes 2 slices of bread will also have about 6 grams of protein. 3 each. Okay. 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. Are you watching me with my terrible typing? Oh my goodness. Okay. That's about 7 grams. So you can see a little here, a little there, and we still didn't get veggies. So every time you eat a half a cup of veggies, better. And the vegetable could be rice, I'm sorry, rice, broccoli, string beans, spinach, cauliflower, carrots, roughly a half a cup of vegetables. I still did it wrong. There we go. Half a cup of any vegetable is going to be about 3 grams of protein. So from the time you wake up in the morning to the time you go to bed, I'm pretty sure most of us are getting our 56, unless there's something really crazy going on. This was going to be 1 ounce of meat. I think I should have labeled it. Here we go. This was 1 ounce, 8 ounces of milk. So it is easy as a person limiting their animal products to still get their 56 grams. And most people who eat animal products will eat double that in an average day. Because an ounce of meat, I'm going to scroll down quickly where I know there's another slide with a good picture. Oh, not that one. There. So a 3-ounce portion of meat, like a 3-ounce piece of fish or a 3-ounce piece of steak or a 3-ounce piece of chicken, is about the size of a deck of cards. And so one of these would be about 21 grams of fat. Could be 23, could be 20, because it kind of slightly varies with bone and connective tissue. But on that note, protein, we're still doing protein. Okay, so if you're eating the equivalent of a deck of cards, that would be this times 3. I hope this is working for everybody. So you eating easily, you're closing in on half of your protein need for the day with a piece of meat and or fish, chicken, otherwise. That's roughly the size of a deck of cards. And then you're having veggies, you're having beans, you're having rice, you're having bread, pasta. I could put pasta is going to have a similar profile to bread. How is that? Is that answer okay for, how do we know we're getting enough protein? It's lots of different things that come together without having to rely on one food. And a handful of peanuts or a handful of walnuts, a handful of almonds, a piece of string cheese, all those things add more protein. The only thing that doesn't kick protein in is fruit. But that's okay. We love fruit for different reasons. I'm going to move on then, okay, Barbara? And then you can.
Yeah, I think we're good. And then
Okay.
what I'll do is at the very end, because we're
Okay.
going to run out of time. I'll
Oh,
ask
yeah.
questions.
I think we played with the lab door a lot. Okay, so carbs. This is our favorite. And fats. The emphasis on fat, plant-based versus plant-centered versus animal. Plant-centered with more or less animal foods. The most important thing is that omega-3 fats are important on a daily basis. And while we can get omega-3 fat from deep cold water fish, you can also get omega-3 fat from walnuts, from flax seeds, from lots of other fruits and vegetables in rather small amounts, but you can get omega-3 from a lot of plant foods as well as from cold water fish. And we did say that the antioxidants are always important in fruits and vegetables. So we know them because they're often the most colorful things, and we know that they're in herbs and spices. But I have an extra little pitch here, that there is actually an anti-inflammatory score that can be used. And I mentioned this briefly in one of our support community meetings. So I'm just going to, again, touch on it. Excuse me. The highest anti-inflammatory score, so it has a little negative sign, but that's negative inflammation. That's the good way, is tomatoes. And then after that, apples and berries, and after that, deep yellow and orange vegetables, down to nut butters. So the things that we know are always good sources of antioxidants. And we could say we eat colorful fruits and vegetables 5 a day the color way, make sure to use spices. Now I can show you numbers that really anchor those decisions. These are the anti-inflammatory foods in their score. This is here because I thought it was beautiful. And that. Now there are also pro-inflammatory scores. And what a surprise. These are not bad foods. They're just foods which may have a high insulin response, which is considered a pro-inflammatory reaction. So the trick is, we know these are part of the big picture, not necessarily an exclusive item. In addition, things that are sweet are also going to have a fairly significant pro-inflammatory score, as well as processed meats. But these are foods that we sort of knew could potentially be problematic. And these are fun foods. They're occasional foods. No one should say, I can never touch them again. They're dangerous. Now, where might there be a concern that there is some discomfort associated with eating a lot of plant foods? And I have 3 categories. One is the presence of what's called lectins. Now, lectins are proteins that bind to carbohydrates, and they seem to, the body has the ability to inactivate them in the digestive tract. But there's a modest amount of research that says some people are very sensitive, and the symptoms that they get could be inflamed joints. So there's been a lot of reference to the nightshade vegetables, which include potatoes, tomatoes, eggplant, peppers, also the tobacco is a nightshade vegetable, which you probably never thought of sticking into a salad, but it's in that botanical family. So in the outside chance, someone might have a sensitivity. The most important thing about lectins is that they are likely to not occur in foods which are fully ripened. The body will manage them better. And I'm giving you information which is not unproven, but it's still questioned. So, but to be aware of it. So possibly a vine ripened tomato won't probably bother you, whereas a hothouse tomato that you buy in the middle of winter may not be the most body friendly. And also that any of the foods should be cooked as often as possible, because then the protein is denatured in the heat. Now, I don't cook my oranges, but I definitely will see myself cooking the potatoes and cooking the eggplant and the fresh tomato. Again, I'm not trying to tell everybody to be cautious about tomato, because I want to emphasize tomato has that insanely high anti-inflammatory score. But if it's something that might be bothering your body, then you can leave tomatoes for occasional and often and very ripe. The next one is Fodmaps. Now that's a word you probably won't use again, and because it's like not in the dictionary, but it stands for, the F is for fermentable, and that refers to the microorganisms that live in your intestines. They can take a carbohydrate and eat it, like you put, if you're making yeast bread, you put a little sugar in there for the yeast to eat, and that wakes them up, and then they can reproduce and create the leavening of your bread. So similarly, the microorganisms in our intestines are eating the carbohydrates from our foods. And some people can be very distressed by it, because the microorganisms create a lot of gas and they bloat. Or the microorganisms in their own life cycles secrete substances that also cause pain and distress. And the categories that tend to be the ones that do that are foods with excess fructose. If you ask me, what do you mean excess fructose? Well, in other words, your sensitivity level is where it becomes excess. So this is a case to not include honey, to not include high fructose corn syrup, to be cautious about apples and pears. But it isn't to say that this is a dangerous food. It's just that some people might react. There's also this thing called fructans, and that's basically fructose, but now the fructose is in a polymer. And the fructans, kind of like lectins that we spoke about a moment ago, are things that plants have evolved in their own life cycle over the several million years to allow them to survive their environment. So fructans, for example, protect a plant's roots from freezing. Doesn't matter to us if they freeze, because we're going to go to the farmer's market and buy fresh ones. But if the fruit that the plant needs to survive and reproduce year after year, this is an important natural substance. But it makes a lot of people very gassy and very distressed. Polyols are naturally occurring sugars. They are, let me say that differently, they're alcohols, but they're sweet. And many people get a lot of gas and diarrhea from foods which have polyols. Lactose, everyone knows about lactose. So, is there a question about the potential for a plant-centered diet to cause distress? The answer is yes. And often someone who has been diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome will be made aware of the presence of fructose and the fructose in the long polymer, kind of like a chain of pearls, speaking of pearls. And here are foods which do not have a lot of fructose or a lot of fructans or polyols. So it isn't a never eat again, but it's a, let's make yourselves aware of what's what. And the last one that is potential concern for oxalates, for a plant-centered diet, is oxalates. Here are some sources of oxalate, and what is the big deal? Oxalates could also affect mineral absorption, iron, zinc, and calcium. They may increase the risk of kidney stones, and if you know anyone that has ever had a kidney concern, they're often recommended to limit oxalate foods. But the takeaway here is not that any of these foods is hazardous. It's kind of an individual sensitivity and also variety. I strongly discourage people from putting spinach in a smoothie 7 days a week. If you need something else to kind of green it up, then go, select another leaf. Even lettuce may sound a little wimpy, but it works. And if you're not eating potatoes 3 times a day, you're okay. Likewise, beets, and you're having almonds and occasional. So the big picture, plant-based or plant-centered eating styles are healthy and they are protective. And one of the ways that you can say, how do I put more plant foods on my menu without, I mean, everyone knows a bowl of oatmeal, everyone knows a slice of toast. So there's a Consumer Reports article written by their dietitians that suggests maybe instead of toast, you could add a sweet potato and put your goodies down in the sweet potato as though it were toast. Sure, that's a nice variety or a variation on a theme. Veggie-based leftovers from dinner the night before. The breakfast burrito. So that's really no news here in New York. I mean, I think we get breakfast burritos at almost every other corner. And another way to invite more vegetables and plants to your diet, once again, adding more to the morning meal, because we sort of see where veggies and plants fit in midday and evening meals. Morning meals are a frontier for new ideas. So this actually comes from Rachel Ray magazine. Here's your whole grain toast, and you can spice chicken smash, again, avocado, white bean smash, beet and feta, ways to put more plants in the meal, not necessarily to the exclusion of animals, but kind of a new way to take a substitute for your butter or margarine. And remember, I showed you this slide a bit earlier. If we were looking at the recommendations in general, it is advised that anyone who's eating an animal food in general doesn't need more than 2 decks of cards a day or 6 ounces. So most of us are probably, without requiring it, eating more meat than the body needs. And this way you can replace some of that with plant foods. I also offered this one earlier in another talk. A simple way to get in, I think this was a food demo that I did during the late winter. You can simply put together some things that you have on the shelf or in the freezer. Lots of plants, here's your diced peaches, some carrots, some spinach, vegetable broth, or if you're cheap like me, water. This could be cheese tortellini, it could be spinach tortellini, but the whole idea is that you put them together in a short time and you have the enhanced amount of vegetables on your plate. And the takeaway in the end, again, is the rough proportion of grains, vegetables, fruits, and protein is as you see here. So we have reached the questions, comments. This is my references. So I'm ready, Barbara. Let's have it.
Okay, we have a lot of questions. So
Okay, I'm
it's just hitting almost 2 o'clock, but since we have nobody coming up behind us, Maudene, you let me know how much time you want to do that.
I'm good.
All right, so let me go to who funds them. My multivitamin has 75 milligrams of B12 in it. Is that enough?
Oh, wow. I'm going to have to remember the recommended, the DRI, dietary reference intake for B12. I think it should be. I mean, is that a person who's not eating any animal products?
I don't know. Nancy, is that, I don't know. She didn't say.
Okay, so that's a nice, easy one. So the DRI, dietary reference intake for B12. This is what I love, Professor Google. They just answer all my questions. Okay. For 3.75 micrograms for women. So how much is in her supplement?
75 milligrams.
Yes.
Okay.
That's far more than what the DRI is. Okay.
Okay. How much
Yay.
zinc, while you've got Mr. Google out, how
Yeah.
much zinc is suggested for a day?
I think it's 15, but I'm going to do that as well. DRI for zinc. And by that, I'm going to show you one other thing because we're having fun. So we're all over 19, right? Okay, so 11 milligrams, I think. What is this? Age, male, pregnancy. What happened to women? That's not fair. But here's what I'm going to show you. The federal government has an Office of Dietary Supplements, and that is the website that this information will load if it's still Friday. Yeah, it's still loading. Okay. So as you see here, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, National Institute of Health, Office of Dietary Supplements, and you can get a lot of fact sheets and lots of information about supplements here. Zinc. So females, 19 plus 8 milligrams. There we go. So I said 15, I was way over. And that's why we search before we are sure what we're saying.
Okay. All right. Convert grams to cups, please.
Oh, okay. So grams of, let me know what kind of a food we want. Grams of what?
I think it's just a conversion of how many grams are in a cup?
Okay. I'm gonna once again make a silly comparison. And give me 1 second to make this extra big because it's too tiny. I'm trying to enlarge the font here. So if we're saying 1 cup is as volume, so that would be like 1 cup of flour or 1 cup of peaches or 1 cup of, I'm just making words up here, 1 cup of tuna fish. That the grams will vary on the food that you're using. You with me?
Yes.
But if it's 1 cup fluid ounces, that's usually approximately 250 milliliters. And that could also be 250 grams. But this is a little bit awkward for me to make sure that I'm thinking of the right translation. Did that help? I'm not sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Next question. How much is too much fiber? My gastroenterologist said to me, lots of fiber plus 4 citrusel a day.
So that sounds like someone who might have chronic constipation, or they're using it for lowering cholesterol because it's also established as a tool. I think when you go above 30, you are potentially running into a great deal of gas. It's just because it means that you're going to have to eat a lot of foods which have all those fibers in them, those fructans and galactans and so on. And your tummy might not like you for doing that. So I think above 30 is a little, stay at 30 or so. Does that help?
Okay, thank you. Protein absorption decreases with age. How do we increase protein intake on a vegetarian diet?
Oh, so this would be with the inclusion of eggs and yogurt and cheese, or exclusively plant-based? Is that
Roberta,
qualified?
please.
I think that you could include that in there. My mother-in-law, when she was in her 90s, was told that the absorption of protein as we age decreases, and she must increase her protein, as she was not vegetarian. And I remember when she would stay by me for a week or whatever it would be, I'd make sure I would give her more of the fish or more of whatever it is, so that the protein, because doctors are not concerned about the vegetarian part of their menu at that age. It's really the protein that has to be sustained.
Okay. So how would be, if I'm not, I found yogurt something which is so easily tolerated, so welcomed. You don't have to chew it. You can, just kind of sip it and swallow it. It doesn't make you fill up and feel like you ate a sofa. So I would increase my protein as yogurt, plus it's a great source of calcium and vitamin D. It's also complete protein. If that's something that everyone is inclined to eat. You would think I own a cow, or I have financially supporting a farm somewhere, but I don't. Maybe I should.
What happens to the vegan person who needs to increase the protein? That's more problematic.
Okay. Then there are pea protein sources that they can add. Pea protein powders. Because the proteins that are in, I'm so sorry, the protein content of vegan yogurt, like cashew yogurt or coconut yogurt, is very, very low. So it's fun, but it's not a protein food. But now that I'm here and I'm not so shy of saying it, best protein for vegan. Let's see if we get. Professor Google is going to speak on it, and it's probably going to give us the same things that we've kind of kicked around. So I like Healthline. I think this is a good online health newsletter, because Healthline provides references for all of their statements, and they also have fact checkers. So hoping I'm not getting a ton of pop-ups. Seitan, does anyone know that one? It's made of the gluten of wheat. It's pretty affordable, and it's in lots of restaurants when they serve a vegan, like shrimp and vegetables. It's a seitan, or chicken in a stir fry. It's seitan. It can be made to look like a lot of different things. Tofu, tempeh, edamame, lentils. Okay, beans. Yep, what's new? Beans. Nutritional yeast. Why not? Available once again in supplements. I haven't had spelt and teff. This is one of those ones that are not part of my everyday thing, nor are hemp seeds. I've seen them and I've tasted them, but I haven't ever bought them myself. So if anyone wants to remember Healthline, again, I don't have stock in the company, but I respect the quality of their presentation of information. Does that help?
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Next question. What do you think of Bragg liquid aminos?
I hate to say I don't have a familiarity with. I mean, I know it exists. I think it's mostly as a flavoring, and it's something that I have tasted and I've enjoyed, but I don't know the profile of it to say, sure, do that twice a day or make that in place of using some other salad dressing or an ingredient. Looks like I Googled it and it's taking forever to load.
I heard that it's a good substitute for soy sauce, which is too high in salt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had it in, I have a neighbor that does a lot of experimenting with ingredients, and she's brought some awesome stuff over. She had a kale salad with aminos. And while I thought, I don't really like raw kale, I ate it like a champ. So here's Healthline again. Healthline must know, I think Chrome remembers me in Healthline and makes it an early part of my search. So I guess my answer is I will be ready with that answer the next time we meet.
Okay. The question, does too much iodine lead to hyperthyroidism?
Too much iodine can have an effect on thyroid gland function. It can interfere with how the natural thyroid hormone binds. So does it lead to underactive or overactive? I can't recall, but it definitely does have a problem. So where is that going to occur? It won't happen for someone eating iodized salt. And if you eat some shrimp and you have other natural sources of iodine, which I think were in my PowerPoint, you're probably not going to go and be in a bad place. But sometimes foods are grown in a soil that has a high iodine content. Is this it? Or that. Oh, that was us. Okay, this was the proteins. I'm looking for the slide. This was iodine. Okay. I'm unlikely that you'll have too much by eating an assortment of foods. I think when there has been an iodine excess, it was a skewed sort of diet. And those things they tend to be reported in sort of medical comments, not so much as a phenomenon. But now, why don't we do that too? Why not? How does one have excess iron, iodine? Is that the way that I should pose it? Okay, sources, assessment, and effects. And this is an article from PubMed, which is the National NCBI, something, the Institute, a federal data source. Consumption of over-iodized salt, drinking water, animal milk rich in iodine. Well, I'm not drinking horse milk, thanks very much. Sweet seaweeds, iodine-containing dietary supplements, and a combination of these sources. So again, it's a relatively skewed way of eating. And while there are some sort of tragic but sort of fascinating things about where people have been in extreme circumstances where they had to eat very limited foods for a extended period of time, is where you would see kind of like green potatoes can be deadly, because that green is an evidence of now that I want to say it, the word doesn't come to my brain, but it has been reported in exceptional circumstances, like during the Depression, when people would eat food that had been thrown away. So I don't know. The population level excess iodine arrives from the consumption of over-iodized salt, drinking water. So where would you get too much iodine in your drinking water? I don't know. Municipal water supplies generally will publish the mineral content of their water. I'm pretty sure New York City is safe, but there obviously are other parts of the world where the desalination process might not take out as much iodine. So maybe there should be caution if I go to Aruba. Oh my gosh.
Okay, next question, because it's 2:12 already. How can I find a nutritionist who specializes in these types of foods? And I'm assuming, Rogers, that you're talking about vegan food? Okay, well, how would you find
yes.
it? Okay.
Yeah.
There is the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Academy. Okay, it's a login. It's because I'm a member, and usually it will have a listing of professional dietitians who are in a zip code, and you can track by zip code. I strongly encourage you to use the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics for that. So let me see if I can find that quickly. Come on, they want to fool around with my stored passwords: practice, research, payment, leadership, advocacy, store pro. I might be on the wrong web page. This is the page for members and all of that. But what I would encourage you to do is to see if you can find this as a search for registered dietitian, RDN. I spelled search wrong, but I'm hoping Google will understand me. Okay, eatright.org is the professional organization's name of their homepage. Why not eatright.org? And again, if I'm on the right page, because this time it shouldn't matter that I log in, because it should be open to the public. This is where you would go doing it by zip code. And she said with so much confidence that it was all going to roll down right here. Find nutrition expert. There we go. So is that clear? Can you see that one? Eatright.org. Find a nutrition expert.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And so there'll be lots of them in the greater New York area, between Bronx, Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Westchester. Tons.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. I'm gonna first ask. I see just new questions and things. Since we're running over, no more questions. I'm just gonna finish up what we have here. If you do have any more questions after that, you can send it to food@rssny.org, and then I can pass it on to Maudene or whoever is appropriate. Okay. Would you display your reference sources again, Maudene? Would you mind sending me your references later on, and then I can forward it to everybody?
They're at the end of the slides.
Oh, okay, great. So
They're
I can
here.
copy them and I'll email them to everybody.
And every now and then I might have put a reference at the bottom of a page. So if it's not on here, it is somewhere displayed because that's somebody's intellectual property and it's not nice to steal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, okay, so I'll make sure to send that to everybody. Let's see, limited animal products. I don't know what you were talking about, Nancy. Will your slides be available to view afterwards? I will find a way to download them and I can have them available to, you're just gonna have to give me a little time, but I'll see about making them available for people. Oh, Nancy just says use bread amino acids instead of olive oil to fry things.
Mhm.
That's an interesting.
Sounds cool. And I've never tried that either. And Eva Vinnas sounds like an excellent
Local
person.
nutritionist. So that would be in this area.
Mhm.
Oh, and Dale, you put in eatright.org for everybody. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
that covers everything.
Okay. It's been my
Erica
pleasure.
Venus. Okay.
Let's see. I'm going to leave this picture up. Hopefully no one's mad at the tomatoes, but it's been my pleasure.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. And we'll be back soon. All right.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. You're amazing. This is
Right, thank you.
phenomenal.
Excellent
Yes.
presentation.
Thank
I
you.
put it in the chat. It's all evidence-based, and that is so much more work. We know that. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good
All
day.
right.
Good
Take care. All right.
Barbara, you and I can stay on for a sec.
Yes, absolutely.
As I mentioned, the only one that I made a new slide for was the iodine one. I had it in notes and then I just realized that I hadn't translated it into the
Oh,
PowerPoint.
okay. That's fine.
So, and what happens is the whole thing is too big to send as is. So I broke it into 3 as you got 3.
I got the 3 and I'll see if I can piece it together. Otherwise, I'll
Okay.
figure
And-
something out.
Okay. And then, so the iodine one, I'll send it as a slide all by itself.
Okay. Sounds
Okay.
good. All
Yeah.
right.
Anything
Thank
else?
you very much. No, I
Okay.
think we're good.
All right then.
Take care.
Cheers.
Have
Okay.
a good day. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.